Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices Webcast, and this time we're concentrating on how you can automate your deployment steps in the Office 365 and in Microsoft Azure. And we're going to use the PnP Partner Pack as the scenario or an example solution how to make that happen. The PnP Partner Pack is one of our starter kits, which are showing how you can implement a self-service site collection creation, a custom sub-site creation experience, and a lot of other governance operations within the SharePoint Online. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a Senior Program Manager from SharePoint Engineering, and with me today as the demo guard or the demo presenter as well is Paolo Pialorsi. So Paolo, will you do the quick intros?
Yes, thank you, Vesa, and welcome everybody. I'm Paolo Pialorsi from psys.com. I'm a senior consultant working in a company of my own, and I'm an MVP on Office 365 or now Office Server and Services. Okay.
Yes, they keep on changing the title of that MVP all the time. But anyway, you're an MVP as well. And Paolo is one of the PnP core team members, and he's been really working into this PnP Partner Pack, which is the reference implementation for showing a lot of the PnP practices in a one solution. And one of the challenges we've been having with the PnP Partner Pack is actually how do we tell and show, how do we make it easy for people to set it up? Because it requires quite a lot of configurations in Microsoft Azure related on web jobs or web application web jobs, also site collections in SharePoint Online and so on. So originally we had a written guidance which was essentially a really long document which was going through steps one by one, execute this, execute that, do this script and everything else. And that's still absolutely valid, but quite often people, when it's a written guidance, you can actually have mistakes when you're going through the written guidance. And that's really the reason why you probably want to look into automating your deployment if you are repeating the deployment numerous times. In the case of PnP Partner Pack, for example, within the last month, we had 300 tenants testing and playing around with the PnP Partner Pack. So we really want to make sure that the setup is easy as possible for people to start using and having a look on what's actually available. Before we go to the actual content, let's quickly run through the intro for SharePoint PnP. So SharePoint Patterns and Practices is a community-driven initiative, open source initiative, which is coordinated by the SharePoint Engineering. But we work together with the community, MVPs and non-MVPs, to provide code samples, guidance documentations. We have community calls, case studies, and the areas are in the SharePoint framework, SharePoint adding model, Microsoft Graph, and Office 365 APIs in general. The whole point of this one is to provide you starting points and samples and instructions how to use and how to customize SharePoint in the cloud and also in on-premises. AKMS SharePoint PnP is the one address to remember. Now, let's get actually on the content. So, before we actually walk through the automation steps and what we're going to show them in practice with the PnP Partner Pack setup, let's quickly have a look on what is the PnP Partner Pack. So this is our reference implementation, which is a ready-to-use reference solution for Office 365 and SharePoint Online. So it is actually providing new UIs, self-service site collection creation UIs or sub-site creation UIs for the end users, and it's using a lot of the different techniques what the SharePoint PnP has been promoting or providing within the past years. It is an open source solution which is available in GitHub, so you can use it any way you want. You can pull it down from the GitHub, you can deploy it as such, you can start extending that and all of that any way you want within your deployments. Obviously, if you find a bug, we would appreciate if you would do a pull request or you would report the issues to PnP team as well. It is based on the PnP samples, guidance and patterns and so on. So it's really combining a lot of the different techniques what we have in the PnP, like the responsive UIs for classic SharePoint and so on. It is based on community efforts. It is really for the community by the community. So it has been, there's tens and tens contributors already in the solution in the GitHub as well. And it is easy to set up and maintain. Especially now that we have this really cool setup wizard, which is available in a GitHub as well, which you can download and have a look on how you could copy that same process within your deployments as well, if you want. Now, understanding what the PnP Partner Pack does, we didn't want to actually deep dive on the technical architecture of that one because we do have a separate webcasts on the PnP Partner Pack, but quickly explaining the UIs. So the PnP Partner Pack is a Office 365 application or Azure application is installed within a tenant level. It's not a multi-tenant application. It is installed per tenant within the Azure site. It provides self-service UIs to create site collection, as an example, and you can choose what kind of templates are available for end users to get started. When you create a site collection, it is requesting all the needed information around the site creation, and then you can actually see which are the site collections which you have created in the past using the tooling as well. And there's also some governance capabilities like managing SharePoint branding across all of the classic SharePoint sites. You can go to that one functionality and say, hey, I want to update a branding across all of my tenant. And there's a capability of doing that. Or if your template is going to be changed, what if your default collaboration site templates should have one additional document library? You can use this governance tooling to apply that across all of the hundreds of thousands of sites which you might have available. Or you can provision site collections in a batch way as well. It also provides this really neat capability of saving site as a provisioning template. And this is an additional capability on top of, let's say, the classic save site as a template, which is not really that flexible, and it's not really usable nowadays due to numerous reasons, and it doesn't support publishing and all of that stuff. So the remote provisioning template is the new model of making sure that your templates are future-proof as well. And this one, the PnP Partner Pack, shows how you can inject this additional link to the site settings page. When the end user clicks that one, it is asking actually, hey, you want to save site as a template? Excellent. Give me the additional details. Is this a template which should be available only within this site collection or across the tenant for others to use as well? And then it's saving that to be available. So now when end user goes and starts creating a subsite, it will actually provide a custom UI for subsite creation. The UIs themselves are pretty polished and they're pretty nice looking. Obviously, it is an open source solution. You can pull it down, you can change the UIs, you can do whatever modifications what you want for your particular deployment. Good. Now, like mentioned, the PnP Partner Pack is a relatively complex solution. It has requirements, so you need to have an obviously Office 365 tenant, at least with an active subscription. You need to have a valid Microsoft Azure subscription for hosting the components, because everything is hosted in Microsoft Azure. And that's really the complex scenario of setting up. You need to be able to do quite a lot of steps in the Azure side. And even though we have videos and written text how to do that, you can easily actually miss a step. And that's why we wanted to actually implement this custom setup tooling, which will make sure that the deployment is exactly the same time after time which the tooling is executed. It's also using the PnP PowerShell commandlets. Well, the latest version is 2.6. It's not actually 2.7. Now the version numbers, I updated version numbers, and now they're completely messed up. But it's anyway, you should use the PnP PowerShell commandlets, and always we recommend to using the latest version. So it's most up-to-date version of the PnP PowerShell.
Yes, and this version is the minimal one. So of course we do suggest to use the latest one, but starting from 2.7 point something, it will work.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. And then the solution itself is built using Visual Studio 2015. Visual Studio 2017 announcement is coming pretty soon, actually, when we're recording this video. So depending on when you're watching the video, it might be already out fully. Obviously, you can use Visual Studio 2017 with this solution as well. Now, there's quite a lot of, like mentioned, there are quite a lot of steps to be able to automate from a deployment perspective when we're setting this up within your Office 365 tenant. And for automating those steps, we are using the Microsoft Graph APIs. So we're accessing the Azure and doing the modifications in the Microsoft Azure side and deploying the solutions and everything else. For SharePoint Online side, we're using classic client-side object model. Well, I said classic, it's absolutely a valid solution for the future as well, but it's a relatively known way of doing stuff. The reference sample is implemented as a Windows Presentation Foundation application, but APIs are based on REST, so you can actually use them with any technology. So just as well, if you're doing a Node.js application or whatever, you can hit those Microsoft Graph APIs and do the automation for you as well. And then we use PowerShell to build and publish publishing the solution from the Visual Studio. So the startup of the setup is that you are actually in a Visual Studio right now, and you want to compile the latest version, which you have just pulled down from a GitHub. And that's where we use the PowerShell to actually build that solution, the web jobs and everything else, and then publishing the solution to SharePoint Online and Azure as well. Good. A lot of theory, a lot of slides, kind of a quick walk through what is the PnP Partner Pack from a scenario perspective, but let's actually have a look on this one in practice. So let's jump into the demo, and Paolo is going to show us the wizard, which is available for you, and also the steps what the wizard is actually doing. This will, in practice, take roughly like 30 minutes, Paolo, right?
Yeah, typically. More or less, yeah.
More or less 30 minutes, but we're going to obviously cut down the waiting times from the video. So we're going to run through the steps of running the wizard, then we're going to actually show you the key points from the code, and then we're going to cut the video for the waiting time as well. But let's jump to the demo section and have a look on this one in practice.
Okay, so now we are in the demo environment, and I would like to start from the manual setup guide that we already provide in the PnP Partner Pack GitHub repo. Just to show you that this is a log document, of course, with a lot of steps, and the main steps to do the provisioning or the setup of the PnP Partner Pack include the creation of a self-seen certificate, the creation of an Azure Blob Storage account, an Azure App Service in which we will publish some web jobs as well. We will have to configure in the Azure AD tenant under the cover of the Office 365 tenant in Office 365 application, which will be the PnP Partner Pack. We will use the X509 certificate for application authentication whenever we want to do app-only tasks against SharePoint Online. We will also have...
that one, sorry, Paolo, just jumping. The app-only is obviously needed for elevation. So the end users don't necessarily have permissions, and this is essentially why we use app-only.
Exactly. And we also need to have an infrastructural set collection on the SharePoint Online side, because we will use that set collection to store some of the settings and of the information about the PnP Partner Pack installation. And last but not least, we will also have to customize all of the .config files of the web application and of the web jobs before publishing them onto Azure, because of course we will need to, for example, reference the right storage account connection string, or the right tenant, or the right client ID of the Office 365 application created in Azure AD. So that's why it is a complex task to set up the entire PnP Partner Pack, and that's why we want to automate it. So how can we do that? Well, we have a fresh Office 365 tenant that I created just for testing purposes and for showing you this demo. And you will have to have an Office 365 tenant, as we already told you, as well as the Azure ID subscription under the cover of the Office 365 tenant that you can reach by clicking on the Azure AD link in the Admin Centers area of the Office 365 Admin Center. If it is the first time that you click on this link, you will have to register and to subscribe to Azure, and so you will have to provide some information, including your credit card, just as a guarantee if you will use any resources that has to be paid to Microsoft. But in order to run the Partner Pack, you will not have to pay anything, just to set it clearly, even if the registration will ask you for a credit card. So I already registered my Azure AD tenant for my Office 365 tenant, and I already have my SharePoint Online ready to go. As you can see here, I have some set collections, and here we will automate the creation of a new one, which will be the infrastructure set collection of the Partner Pack. On the other side, on the Azure side, here we will have the Azure Active Directory, which is under our Office 365 tenant, and inside the applications registered in this tenant, we will create a new item, a new application, which will be the PnP Partner Pack. On the other side, we have another Azure subscription, which is the one I will use to host all of the services like the blob storage, the application service, and the web jobs. Right now, my Azure subscription is fully empty, as you can see, but just after the setup process, it will be ready to go and it will have all of the services needed. So, let's go to Visual Studio, and as we already told you, in order to execute the setup wizard, you have to start or from Visual Studio or from a fork or a full pull of the source code of the PnP Partner Pack, and you will have to execute the office.pnp.partnerpack.setup project. We assume that you will execute this application from Visual Studio or from the file system, but using the same file system outline that we are using, because we need to reference all the other projects in the solution, which will have to be built by MS Build and to be published on Azure. So please don't simply download the setup package by itself, because it's not autonomous. It needs all of the source code of the project, because it will build the partner pack on the fly before publishing it. So if I start this application, you will see that it's a WPF application with a kind of a nice UI, and you can use this application to provide a bunch of input settings that will be used by the setup wizard to configure all of the artifacts. First of all, you will need to provide the credentials to access the Office 365 tenant here, and those credentials will have to be the credentials of a tenant global admin account. So I can click on the login button, and here I have Microsoft ADIL, Active Directory Authentication Library, version 3 point something, and you have to authenticate using your Office 365 credentials. That's what I'm going to do. The very first time you will authenticate, you will also have to consent to the PnP Partner Pack Setup Wizard, which is a multi-tenant application registered in Azure, to access your tenant. And of course I will do that. And sorry for some Italian messages on the UI, sometimes it happens. Now, as you can see, the setup wizard pre-configured a bunch of settings just based on the name of the tenant that you authenticated to. Why? Because usually we do suggest in the manual setup as well, the manual setup guide, to provide some specific names to all of the services and all of the objects that you will create. And so we do that for you in the setup wizard. Of course, you can change all of these settings, but you can simply do the login, provide a couple of more information, and you will be ready to run your setup. Of course, we need to have an SSL certificate, the one for the app-only authentication. And so here we have the capability to create a new one, self-signed, just providing a password. Or if you want to use one of your own, you can upload it. Moreover, there will be the creation of the infrastructure set collection into the target tenant, as well as the settings for time zone, locality, and so on and so forth.
And quickly, Paolo, on that one, just to clarify, the infrastructure site collection is something what the PnP Partner Pack is doing, and it's saving the templates and everything else on that site collection. So,
yeah, exactly. And last but not least, we have the Microsoft Azure settings. So we need to provide one more set of credentials. Here we have another multi-tenant application with its own client ID, which will be used to register our setup wizard into the target tenant to be able to create all of the artifacts, all of the services. So let me log in one more time, but right now with a different set of credentials, which are those that I use for my Azure subscription. If you want, you can set up all of the services needed by the PnP Partner Pack within the same subscription that you use for your Office 365 tenant. However, to be honest, I rather prefer to keep them separated, and so that's why I made it possible from the setup wizard to select two different subscriptions. It's up to you, of course. Now, I'm going to authenticate against my Azure subscription so that I can have the list of full subscriptions that I have based on that set of credentials, and I will select to use this one as well as to use the North Europe location for all of the services. As you can see again, the app service name and the blob storage name have been argued based on the name of the tenant in Office 365. So now we are ready to start our setup. So basically, we just need to provide three minimal inputs: the Office 365 account, the Azure account, and the password for the certificate. Pretty easy. If I click on the Setup button, the Setup wizard will start creating all of the needed artifacts and services. First of all, it will create the infrastructure set collection in SharePoint Online, because it is really needed and it is a fundamental component which has to be ready before all of the other steps. And if now we go back in our SharePoint Online admin site, let me refresh this UI. There should be the infrastructure site collection pending creation, or not yet, but it will come soon. In this list of site collections, we will have the PnP Partner Pack site collection, which will be under creation. In the meantime, while the application is working, let me show you what happens under the cover of the application. So, we have a WPF solution, as I told you, in which we have some components, including a setup manager component. This is the main and fundamental component of the setup wizard, because inside this guy, we do all of the steps to provision all of the services. First of all, as you can see, we create the infrastructure set collection. Then we create the self-signed X509 certificate, or we use the one provided by the user. We register the application in Azure AD. We create on the Azure subscriptions a resource group, a storage account, and an app service. Once we have all of this stuff created, we can configure the .config files of the app service and all of the web jobs. And so then we are ready to build and publish the website and to build and publish the web jobs. Just to give you some insights about how it works, let me dig into the create infrastructure set collection method. As you can see, here we simply use the PnP core library, we use the tenant object of the CSOM library, and we use some extensions methods that we provide in PnP core library to check if a site already exists and to remove it from the recycle bin if any, to see if we need to create the site or it has already been created, because I want to tell you that I'm also working on adding the capability to maintain the PnP Partner Pack during its lifetime. So you will be able to use the setup wizard multiple times with the same settings, targeting the same setup, and whenever we will release a new version of the Partner Pack, you will simply have to run one more time the setup process and everything will be updated for you, including the PnP core component and all of the settings on Azure and Office 365. So, here we create a new object called site entity, which is in PnP core, we define all of the settings, and we create the site collection in the target Office 365 tenant. Pretty easy. Just after that, we apply a bunch of templates, of PnP provisioning templates, onto the target infrastructure site collection to create all of the needed artifacts, like a document library for jobs, a document library for templates, and some other custom settings that we need. Just after that, let me go back to the main procedure. As I told you, we create the X509 certificate. The creation is based on a, I would say, old school COM component, unfortunately, because we still need to use COM to create a certificate. And because of this requirement to being able to create an X509 certificate, you will have to run the application as an admin. Don't worry to keep in mind this requirement, because in the manifest file of the application, I declare this requirement. So if you will execute the application without being an admin, there will be the UAC asking you to log in with admin credentials. So now, I will not dig into the details of creating an X509 certificate, but here you have a sample about how to do that in .NET in case of any need. Moreover, one more interesting excerpt is the creation or the registration of the Azure AD application in the Office 365 tenant. we do that by using the Microsoft Graph API, the beta endpoint of the Microsoft Graph API at the time of this recording, which allow you to create a new application in the Azure AD under the cover of your Office 365 tenant. So I have a predefined JSON manifest file for my application with some fields which are empty, like, for example, the key credentials or the identifier URIs and stuff like that. And I simply load that JSON file in memory. I customize the settings that I need to properly set before creating the application. And then I just need, for example, here I create also a shared secret to have a client ID and a shared secret for my application. And once I'm done, I can simply get an access token from ADAL, targeting my Office 365 environment, and I can create the real Azure AD application. The creation of the Azure AD application is just a post HTTP request against the URL of the Microsoft Graph API beta endpoint /applications. So whenever you post the JSON manifest of an Azure AD application onto this target endpoint, the Microsoft Graph API will create the application for you, which is really, really cool. Moreover, we have the creation of all of the Azure resources. And here, I will give you just one example of creating the resource group. I will not dig into all of these steps, but we create the Azure resource group. And just after that, all of the services inside that resource group. Well, we define the name of the resource group and of the service plan based on the name of the app service, just to make it easier to identify those resources in your Azure subscription. And then we use an Azure management utility that you can reuse, of course, which has, for example, a create resource group method. Well, this guy will still use HTTP REST APIs, but those REST APIs based on the Azure management REST APIs, which allow you to completely and fully manage all of the services that you have in Azure. So, for example, we target our own subscription, and we target the resource groups, and we provide a new name for a resource group that will be created. Right now, here, we check making an add request if the resource group already exists, again, to be able to support the upgrade of the solution. And if the resource group does not exist, we can put on that URL a new JSON object, which is an anonymous type in my scenario, which will simply provide the name and the location of the resource group. We deserialize the response, and we will have back the result, which can be succeeded or not, of course. And we will have to,
Yeah. So and then we can see that it's actually done. So one comment on this REST endpoint. So in this one, like mentioned, we're using the Azure Management API URI because these capabilities are not yet available in the Microsoft Graph. We can kind of assume that we can't. Well, I can't. Paolo cannot commit that this will be in Microsoft Graph, but at some point, most likely Microsoft Graph will expose these APIs as well. But right now, you need to use this Azure Management API URI, REST APIs. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And so let me go back to the last interesting steps of this setup process. So the configuration of all of the settings, which is really, really easy. Here I simply use system.xml to play around the .config files and to set all of the settings. So I will not dig into this guy because it is really easy and simple. It is not critical, but it is really interesting on the other side to see how I build and deploy the website as well as the web jobs. So let me dig into this guy, and the build and deploy website method simply uses an external PowerShell script which will be executed under the cover of our application. So you will not see a console application on the screen. It will be executed inside the WPF application, and you have a class that you can reuse if you want to do that. This guy, run.runscript. And the PowerShell script, which is here in the solution, is really simple. It simply uses the registry of your machine to identify the path in which you installed the version 14 of MS Build, which is needed because we use the latest version of C#, and we use some of the syntax of the latest version of C#. So you can't use, for example, MS Build 12 or 2 or 4, which are well-known versions of MS Build. You will have to have the latest one at the time of this recording. So I get the path so that you can set up it wherever you want, and then I simply create a temporary folder on your C drive or on your system drive. I know which is not very kind to create a folder in your own environment, and I'm sorry about that. But we need a very short named folder to contain all of the files that will be uploaded to the target Azure environment. And at the very end, I will remove that folder. Because we are admins, we are executing this application as admins, we can do that. And then I run the MS Build command tool, providing some settings like, for example, to build the solution in release, to output the solution in the temporary folder I created, to use the latest version of Visual Studio, at least today, and to use a publishing setting file, which will be the one used to publish the application on Azure. In fact, we say deploy on build true. So just after the build, there will be the deploy phase. And then we remove the folder and we go back to our setup manager. A similar story, but not exactly the same story, applies for the web jobs. Here we still do have to build the jobs, and in fact we have another PowerShell script which still gets the MS Build folder and still executes MS Build, but with a few parameters, just to build the web jobs in release for Visual Studio 14. Those comments are just for our own reference, so don't care of them. So once I have built the web jobs, in order to publish a web job on Azure, I have to create a zip file. So I will use the System.io compression zip file class to create a new zip from the folder in which I built the solution. Then I will create on the fly the needed settings for my web job, and I upload the web job still using the Azure Management Utility. Here, I cannot use the resource management APIs of Azure because right now the web job publishing is not yet completely supported in that REST API. However, unlikely, we have the Kudu service, which is the one which extends the management of your Azure website, which provides us the capability to do the publishing of an Azure web job. So I use a different endpoint, which is the appservicename.scm azurewebsite.net. I have to provide a basic authentication instead of open authorization authentication. I have to read the zip file as a stream to post that file, to put that file as an application/zip, which is a fundamental requirement, otherwise the web job publishing will not work, as well as another fundamental requirement is to provide a content disposition header with an attachment value with the name of the file that you are going to upload. Then you will send the file into the zip folder of the site, www.root appdata jobs, the name of your job. And that's all. Following all of these steps, you will have the full setup ready to go. At the end of the setup process, the setup manager will return the control to the application, to the UI, and the UI will simply start a browser to let you browse to the Azure App Service that is hosting the PnP Partner Pack. So now let's go back to the setup wizard and let's see how it is going. Oh, cool. So the site collection has already been created as well as the X509 certificate. And now the setup wizard is creating all of the Azure stuff. So let me go back to the site collections list that I have in my Office 365 tenant. Let me refresh this guide just in case. And here we can see that we have the PnP Partner Pack site collection. Let me open this site just to show you the result, the partial result at least. And here we will have, for those of you who already installed the Partner Pack, the well-known infrastructure site collection with, in the site contents, a couple of libraries, one to host the provisioning templates and another one to host the provisioning jobs. At the same time, the wizard is installing or is creating all of the other services. And so right now, for example, it already created all of the basic services in Azure, and it is starting the provisioning of the Azure website. That means building and publishing the website. So if I go to the other screen in which I have my Azure subscription, if I go under the resource groups, I can see that I have my new resource group, and if I go to see all of my resources, I have the app service with the website and the storage account. As soon as the build and publish of the website and of the 4 web jobs that we need in the PnP Partner Pack will be done, the full setup will be completed and we will be ready to play with the application. Just one last thing that I want to show you before pausing the video and waiting for the completion of the setup is that if we go back in the Azure ID under our Office 365 tenant, here we will find the Azure ID application for the PnP Partner Pack configured and ready to go. So let's wait for a while to refresh the UI. And under the app registrations section, we will have the PnP Partner Pack. And here we will have all of the settings and the manifest that we uploading using the Microsoft Graph, which will include a bunch of information about the PnP Partner Pack settings, the key credentials, the permissions required to run the application, and so on and so forth. So and that's what we need. But
Paolo, on this particular thing, this is quite common. This is exactly the step where people usually fail within their manual deployment as well. So it's great to have this one automatically configured.
Yeah, that's true. So now we simply have to wait. It is already provisioning the web jobs. So we can pause for a while and we will come back when the setup will be completed.
Sounds good.
So right now the setup has been completed. The wizard is ready to do another setup if you want. And so I can go to my browser. By default, the wizard will open your browser targeting the PnP Partner Pack URL. And by opening this URL in my session related to this Office 365 test tenant, you will see, first of all, I will have to accept to provide some permissions to the PnP Partner Pack, which are the permissions needed to properly run the service. I have to accept. And the home page will be loaded. It takes a while because we need to have the just-in-time compilation of the ASP.NET code happening. This is the first time that we run the application. And just to let you know, sometimes could happen that at the very first request, you will get a 401 exception, exactly. Sometimes it happens, but usually you simply need to refresh the home page. It is a matter of timing. So the Azure ID is not yet completely updated with the latest informations. So you simply need to go back to the home link, refresh the home page, and you will see the PnP Partner Pack running. So let's try. Here we go. Here we will have the home page of the PnP Partner Pack ready to go. If you go into the settings area of the PnP Partner Pack, there you can see we have a bunch of site collections, and there is a test one in which we have the PnP Partner Pack extensions enabled. And if we open this site collection, from here we can go to the site settings, for example, in order to see that we will have the save site as provisioning template capability, which will bring us to the page in the PnP Partner Pack to save our site as a template. It's a matter of few seconds for the ASP.NET just-in-time compilation to happen. And here we are. Or we can go back to the test site, and if we go in the site contents, from here we can create a new sub-site, and again, the UI of SharePoint will be quickly replaced by a UI provided by the PnP Partner Pack, from which you can select your template and do all of your stuff. So, from an end-user perspective, the PnP Partner Pack is ready to go and fully set up by the wizard.
Now, Paolo, on that particular topic, can you go back on the slide? So one of the things, obviously, just kind of showing where the PnP Partner Pack is visible. It's also visible in the Office, the app launcher, isn't it? Or it's available now there, or it should be now that the Azure AE and everything else is configured.
Sometime it takes some time, but right now we have it. So you can click on this link and open the Partner Pack from here as well.
Yes.
And if you want, you can pin this app in the main app launcher if you like.
Yes. Yeah. So all of this was done automatically by the tooling. And one thing actually related on this one. So this is not just, like mentioned, this is not just for setting up the PnP Partner Pack, because what we're trying to do with this one is to show everybody the model how you can automate deployments to Azure and SharePoint Online. Because there's a lot of customers and partners who do, let's say, a large enterprise scale development in SharePoint Online and in Office 365 and in Azure. And you need to automate your test setup for every single day. So in your automation code, which is running every single night, you could take advantage of this kind of a deployment model as well.
Absolutely, absolutely true. And so feel free to grab the code, look into the syntax, and use whatever or reuse whatever you like for your own solutions. I think that's all, Vesa, for this demo.
Cool. Let's switch back on the slides and close up the webcast. Thank you, Paolo. Good. Thank you, Paolo, for that one. It's a really, really nice tool. And really, even though in this case we are kind of using the PnP Partner Pack as the story for it, this is not really just for the PnP Partner Pack. Think about if you are building similar solutions by yourself and you have, let's say, tens of customers or multiple customers in general, and you want to avoid the complexity of, or the, let's say, human errors as part of the deployment, this is really a nice model for you to take granted, pull down the code, have a look on the code, analyze the code, and then implement your own setup solution, which you can use for your solution as well. But I think that's it for this particular webcast. So Paolo, any last words from your side?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for watching this video and enjoy with PnP and PnP Partner Pack.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paolo. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll come up with a new webcast sooner or later. Thank you.